Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's dissatisfied with the outcome of the latest 2 days of talks with Russia and the US. Washington, on the other hand, reporting what it called meaningful progress. No breakthrough, though, as officials from both Moscow and Kyiv said the discussions were difficult. Well, let's have the reaction then from Kyiv. We're going to talk to our correspondent who joins us now on the programme, Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, cynics perhaps would say not surprisingly no breakthrough here. I mean, what's the reaction, would you say, been there?
I'm not sure if it's even appropriate to talk about a reaction because everybody in Ukraine, at least everybody who was commenting on the radio, pundits, people writing in the media, was convinced before these talks started that nothing would come out of them. The main reason that they cite for this, apart from the broader context, being the fact that Vladimir Putin had decided to reappoint Vladimir Medinikov to head his delegation for Russia. He was leading Russian delegations in talks months ago in Turkey, for example, where he just adopted a very antagonistic stance, bringing up things like the status of the Russian language or the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine, which Ukraine views as Russian interference in internal Ukrainian affairs and not something that should be on the table at all, and basically there to create a tense atmosphere, waste time, and not with an intention to make genuine progress. So as soon as he'd been named, the Ukrainians felt even more sure than they already did that the Russians weren't really serious about these talks. They, on the other hand, sent a very high-level delegation because they think that it's important to be able to counter the Russians' arguments in the best way possible in front of the Americans in particular who are present, and also European partners who are present. Perhaps the Americans aren't entirely lying when they say that meaningful progress has been made, because there is a technical aspect also to these talks in terms of how a ceasefire might eventually be monitored, how you're going to classify certain things, and on technical details, we're told that there is real progress being made, but those technical details mean nothing unless there is progress on the political front.
It comes as well, doesn't it, amid ongoing reports that we've been receiving really over the last week of more success, though, for Ukraine on the battlefield itself.
Of course, this is a huge glimmer of hope, if a glimmer can be huge, for Ukraine. The idea that this Russian offensive is not going to go on forever, that the tide will at some point turn, and it has to a limited degree in Zaporizhia region in the south of Ukraine. I think it's important, although the Ukrainians are talking it up, and you can understand why, to stress that it is to quite a limited degree. They've retaken, so they say, 200 square kilometers of territory, which is the biggest Ukrainian counteroffensive since 2022. It is quite an important advance by the Ukrainians, but this is not territory where the Russians had really established themselves, established an occupation regime. It's territory that the Russians had gained, most of it in December of 2025, only freshly gained, and parts of it probably would more appropriately be called a grey zone than having been under Russian territory. So whether they took them, the Ukrainians, back from Russia or reclaimed them from a grey zone and stabilized the front, it depends how you want to categorize it. And the reason also why the Russians have lost a little bit of ground in recent days is that they lost this access to Starlink. Elon Musk has cut off their access to Starlink, which they needed, and so that is causing problems for them and may continue to do so, but also because of this Russian decision to block or partially block the Telegram messaging app and social media, which I think was done for political reasons, nothing to do with the war, and they perhaps didn't realize that it would also have an impact on the Russian soldiers on the front line's ability to communicate with each other, but they're sure to find replacements for that very swiftly.